Hi class, welcome to Module 3. We begin looking at methods and theories in this module. Um, so it's going to be very concise, and understand that in the sociology of family, we use theory in sociology to guide us, but we also look at some of the other theories out there because many of them cross over. So social psych theories are are part of sociology as well as part of psychology, and they're very tied to the interactions of families. Now, theories in sociology can be very in-depth as far as all different levels in there. We're not going near that in this class. We're going to look at the bare basics theories, and we'll look at micro and macro levels, and a little bit at the meso, because meso is in the middle here that ties them together. Now, these methods and theories drive the information that you'll get throughout this course. So it's important to understand what methods we take to get there. So I'm going to do a brief review of some of the course information, the book information here, and then you'll have some other assignments to do. So let's start with some information on how we collect research. So, as I've said before, sociology is a science. Believe it or not, it's even part of the STEM. And STEM are courses that focus on sciences, and it's considered that as part of the government when we look at the building of what occurs. Now, there's always this argument, you know, because every time I mix Jane and Paul, I don't get the same result. It's not like hydrogen, right? Two molecules of hydrogen, one of oxygen, I'm going to get water. You see, there's this difference, but everything is guided and studied in a very scientific manner. So the information you're getting out of this textbooks has been looked at by researchers, and researchers are looking at that information. Students always ask why they have to do a research paper for this class, because you're looking at original research on something that interests you to see what researchers have found about those. So science sociology starts with oftentimes theory, especially if we're looking at quantitative, and we can look at data that we collect. Now, qualitative research may look at the individuals and see what's going on and then develop the theory. But theory explains what's going on in the process. So, one of the theories we deal a lot with in families is social exchange theory. Why does a mother love her baby so much and put all that energy into that? Well, it's part of our natural abilities. All those things come in place, but there's a social exchange that occurs in the process, that as you love that child, it loves you back. As you care for that child, and aging will care for you. Social exchange as far as husbands working and wives maintaining the home and the old traditional family. There was a social exchange that goes on. We look at those theories to give us explanations for what's going on. So we use theory to drive our hypothesis, which guide our observations. Sorry about that. But observations then follow the hypothesis. So let me give you this example here. In doing some of my research, I'm currently looking at students taking exams. And so when we look at theory, we look at educational theories that come into place, and then we are forming from that. So my hypothesis is basically that students who take courses and their exams online, as you are in this class, and as my class is in the classroom, Well, spend less effort on those than if they were taking them in class. So, online exams, where are they at? Then we observe what's going on and we do research on that. So, we watch how many times, how long they're on and taking their exams, how they do in their exams, and then we do a survey of how they study for exams. Is it different for an online exam versus an in class exam? And does that vary based on the information that's, whether you're in an online class or in a in class? Does it make a difference? So we kind of explore those things. Or give you another one. Um, Social exchange. I talked about that and what goes on within social exchange. Who does what within the home? And we know that men are doing more childcare than ever before and more a little bit more housework than they were before in the home. So the theory comes into place that if these follow what's typically going on in the exchange or the theories related to transitional house families, um, we'll look at that theory, make a hypothesis, and the hypothesis would be that, okay, men are doing more housework and they're doing more childcare. Therefore, my hypothesis would be that they would do more healthcare and then do the research related to it. By the way, found out men are not doing more healthcare. It's still women's job. These are important things as we start thinking about the issues of family, what goes on with it. So theories can be micro, that will be cases that are individuals and examples. We can see such as a small look at individuals' reactions to that healthcare piece. Macro are the causes. What are the social entitlements in there? Why does a woman do more? What are the social entities coming into place? And the macro especially may be tied to the social norms or the functionalist status that comes into place, that who belongs to healthcare. Meso looks at the things in between that come into place. So significant things come into place. And when we gather data, as I mentioned before, we gather it in multiple ways. And we oftentimes use quantitative methods. By the way, you as students are the most researched population in the world because you're available to the professors. And oftentimes you're asked to fill out surveys. And surveys are a quantitative collection oftentimes because they're quick with a lot of numbers. That's data and numbers. Where qualitative means oftentimes are collected by interview or field research. Now, occasionally we'll do qualitative by surveys as well, but that takes a lot of gathering information in the process to explore what's going on. Now, not all sociologists will agree with this, but I think mixed methods, which uses both, gives us a better picture of what's going on within families. And so it really gives us that picture of what that individual piece is, as well as the big data. And when we're talking quantitative here, we're talking about national surveys of 5,000 and 6,000 people that go on. So the National Survey of Families done by the government, which runs every 3 or 4 years, that they ask these big samples, really give us a picture of what's going on in the family. Now, theoretical frameworks guide us throughout this course as well. And you'll find that the typical sociology theories are functional, structural functional, conflict, and symbolic interaction. And those are pretty driving forces throughout all sociology classes. I've given you some information later on for you to look at those in more detail if you're interested. But in this class, we'll look at those very briefly. The other things that come into place, and if you've taken social problems, we talk about feminist theory, but feminist theory is also considered a subset of conflict at times. Social exchange is what I've already mentioned to you. Very important when we start looking at families and life course theories. Life course theories will drive especially things in aging and how we live our life and how we expect it. So functionalist theory influenced the thought process throughout the 20th century, and they look at society as an organism that must function optimally to work together with each other, that there is this expected level of behavior that comes into place that society thinks is the best way for it to function. So the traditional home, and when we break out of that traditional home, it causes a fluctuation in the system. So the institutions like the family ensure society survival by fulfilling certain functions. Sexual regulation, okay, that sex occurs within the structure of marriage, reproduction, that socialization, and that distribution of resources, that family care for each other. Now, multiple theorists working here, and Parsons is one of those. If you take of medicine later, you'll hear Parsons' names again. But they argue that the role is complementary, is the most functional for family, that fathers interact as instrumental role and women interact as an expressive role. And they see this as pulling the family together as the best way, and that these things need to be in place. Now, does it make sense? Not always. Functionalist theory likes to hold us to that question: is the American family changing, or is it dying in the process? Basically, because of the changes from this, you see, structural functionalist idea is not well supported now. And most sociologists use this as a base to look at the structure, but few stand on the board to say that we need to return to this clear, not moving structure. Now, conflict theory is based in Karl Marx, and from that it has grown greatly, but it emphasizes the unequal power relation and competition for scarce resources. Conflict is inherent to social organizations, and so we see this related to inequality of gender, race, class, age, sexuality, all of those structures that come into place, and the fight within that. So we look at the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Those are words that Marx used. They are French. And so the bourgeoisie are the rich and the powerful, who are the minority, oftentimes controlling the majority. And we see that in place, and we see how that works. It's interesting. Karl Marx, when he's writing about family, he writes with John Ingalls, and he actually states that the marriage is probably the worst place for a woman to be, because at that point in that history, the man controlled the woman and he owned everything that she owned, or her earnings. So it really put her in that bourgeoisie. He was the power and she was the proletariat doing all the work that benefited that process. We can see how we look at these inequalities that occur, and we start seeing the conflict. Symbolic interaction is based on a number of different things, and we see that social life is a system that creates interactions, that we learn from our interactions, and we can see the power on these. So Bloomer gives us three premises: that we act towards things based on their meaning, and meanings are learned in interpretation, and meanings must be interpreted. So we'll see the influence of family, especially in the symbolic interaction. So what we've learned at our family that gives us the meaning to interpret what's going on in society. So it's that micro level focus that comes into place. Now, feminist theory looks at the analysis of family as a gendered institution, and they consider men and women's distinct experiences in family and the different interactions that come into place. And you can see how this theory oftentimes is linked with conflict. But to understand what affects one gender, we must look at both. So we can't just look in feminist theory at the issues of women, we have to look at both. And what they're often saying is that women haven't been looked at in the past. It's looked at the focus on men. I mentioned social exchange before. Social exchange is how relationships are built through the exchange of resources. And there's a whole issue of power within those resources and who has the power. We'll talk about that more in family work situations, and we'll see the influence of power based on earnings, based on prestige, and based on resources. So all of those things come into play as we start exploring how families work. And finally, as we look at life course theory, this focuses on the time, the link between age, the historical period we're part of, the timing of life experiences, the life paths that are influenced by the paths of others. So if you had a happy childhood, think about this. We know that there are such issues as bonding between parent and child. And if they are nurtured and cared for and loved at a young age, they learn to love in their teenage years and their young adult years. They know that path, that they're influenced by the things that have happened to them in the past. Think about tragedies that have occurred. How someone copes with those tragedies indicates how they will function later in life. And so that we see that those that have done well in tragic situations in the past oftentimes will do well again. With that said, let me pop back over to your. So here's Module 3. Short reading from the textbook for you, then a quick look at some scientific method, giving you a little more information. Two of these go in order, and then the major social theories, the paradigms are also for you, just to give you another explanation at a deeper level than what I've given with the short review of the chapter information and some additional things. Complete your discussion boards and move forward with your quiz. Make sure you take your quizzes and do your discussion boards by Sunday at 11:30. Don't forget your initial post on your discussion board needs to be done Wednesday by 11:30. Thanks and have a great day.